I tell you, 1990 is a pretty interesting year um, for films, isn't it?
Yeah, I always.
I mean, like your Kindergarten Cops, your Rocky Five, your Child's Play 2. Like 1990 just seemed to be. Um, it was almost in a way very much preparation for what filmmaking might be in the 2000s.
Yeah, I always liked the original Child's Play trilogy. I was about the same age as Andy Barclay, give or take a year or two when these were coming out.
Yeah, Alex Vincent.
Yeah, it hadn't always been with Universal, though United Artists distributed the first film and they had a failed merger with Christopher Skase, that corrupt Australian businessman. This merger or this acquisition just fell through. So
We're not all
David,
like that down here, people.
yeah, David Kirshner got the property rights to the property back pretty much for a steal, and I think it was Steven Spielberg who nudged him into the direction of Universal as a sort of bigger studio, a bigger distributor, and I think it's been there ever since. Universal always had a sort of strong horror background with your Draculas and your Frankensteins, but in the sort of 80s and 90s they were sort of doing other genres of films, putting a lot of attention into other sort of movies. But yeah, it found a good home at Universal. I think what with 6 or 7 films and a successful television series, it's really.
And top
Yeah.
billing to Alex Vincent, like, and this is same year as Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. Or did he have top billing in that? That might have even been John Hurt or Catherine O'Hara getting top billing in that. But in this one, starring Alex Vincent right off the bat, it
Yeah, I
might not have been
was.
done before.
Yeah, it was something always not bugged me, but I always found it interesting that Catherine Hicks, who played his mother Karen, never came back, or
Chris
Chris
Sarandon,
Sarandon, who
yeah.
was Detective Norris from the first film. But the way Brad Dourif explained it made perfect sense. I was overthinking it. He was not a fan of bringing them both back because if you bring them both back, it's pretty much the same movie as the first film.
Well, I was
By
thinking
just
about.
bringing Andy back, it forces you to go in a different direction.
Well,
So I thought, yeah, that's a really simple but effective explanation.
I was thinking that as well, but something else stuck out to me on a rewatch with that in mind because I've always wondered why Chris Sarandon never came back. Because in my mind, he was the real selling point for me. He was my favorite character in the original.
Yeah, mine
Um,
too.
yeah, and awesome actor. What got me was I think another big kind of real world reason as to why they never came back was because if you bring back Detective Norris and Andy's mum, you've already got two adults in authority that believe Andy and know that Chucky is real.
Yeah, that's a good point as
So
well.
that totally cripples any idea of a sequel because a major component of this one is they know he's traumatized by a rumored killer doll that he maybe dreamt up, but to keep that suspense going, you can't have people believing him. So if you bring them to, basically as out of necessity, they couldn't bring them back. Their hands were tied for the story that they wanted to tell.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. It's a good example here of how to deal with kind of clunky exposition. One thing is you have the characters walking and talking, and he says it so fast you kind of just gloss
I love
over
the
it.
oil rig in the background as well. Like, where is this place? Yeah.
You have the assistant telling the head of the Play Pals toys that Andy's mother has been institutionalized.
Yes, she's
I
been
kind of
sanctioned,
didn't
yeah.
like. I didn't like the line. The cops were smart. They denied everything because I think it kind of betrays Chris Sarandon's character. He's skeptical at first in the first film, but once Chucky attacks him and he finds some other evidence to corroborate what Karen Barclay's telling him, he wholeheartedly supports her. So it kind of was a bit of a false note for me.
Well, can I just jump in there? There's also that moment when Sarandon talks to his partner after he tells him in the first film, don't touch any part of it, then he saves his partner from Chucky when he shoots him in the heart. Do you believe me now? Yeah, but who's going to believe me? Probably no one. So I believe they didn't report it because, in my mind, it's not quite as a fault to me as or as a catch to me as you might think it is. Because I remember back to that scene, like no one's going to believe that at all because the entire first film is about Andy trying desperately to get someone to believe him.
Yeah,
like look how far it has to go before his mum does it. So the cops denied everything. Doesn't surprise me. Although one thing I will say though that's interesting, the cops denied everything about a killer doll. Well, the reason behind that, like it kind of stuck out to me. Well, why would it go that far that they needed to deny those allegations? Because the mom and Andy would have said it anyway, regardless of what Norris and his partner would have reported.
Yeah.
So it does kind of work out. Like the broad strokes are there.
Yeah, I love the executive of the toy company because he gets his comeuppance in the third film. I'll always love hearing stories about douchebag characters who are actually quite affable in real life, and that older fella who wants to have a look at the doll.
It literally electrocutes a guy to death, and he's just like, oh well.
Yeah, but he was quite sort of friendly and sort of hard-working on set by all reports. And I always love that line, although it's coming up shortly, about what do you want me to do with the doll? Now, here's Alex Vincent.
I tell you something right now, like child actors as the main leads, you know, it's been done in things like Neverending Story, like with Noah Hathaway and stuff like that. And, you know, we had Macaulay Culkin this same year with Kevin McAllister and that kind of jazz, and the TV miniseries with Tim Curry. There's something to Alex Vincent that I believe that none of the other children have ever had, and there's a certain type of innocence to the way that he speaks.
I think he's brilliant.
Which is simply just devoid of a lot of child actors.
I think he's incredible in both of these movies. The character itself has had an interesting evolution because the sequel to this one, which came hot on the heels like a year later, is set, 9 or 10 years later, and they recast him with Justin Wallen. And then you go forward in time, another decade or two, Alex Vincent comes back as an adult Andy Barclay. It's really interesting how everything kind of worked out. This is a very funny line, I remember. Yeah, what do you want me to do with the doll? Shove it up your ass.
Yeah, he wrote a book. He's never read a book. I love how the doll is literally blocking the CEO's way, and he doesn't click, like, at all. It just killed a guy, and it's given him that.
There's a great documentary called Life with Chucky, which chronicles the making of the whole franchise. I can't do the origin of Chucky any justice. David Kirshner, who's the producer, and Don Mancini did it great. Although put a pin in that. This is Zabriskie.
I was going to say, is this Laura Palmer's mother from Twin Peaks? Yeah, I know. The hair just phenomenal. Stuck out to me,
I love it a bit. And she does return as Sarah Palmer in Twin Peaks, The Return. This guy here, Phil, I quite like his character in the film because he's the only one talking sense.
But this is what I said with the mask discussion, and that is, in these outlandish films, it always helps to have that one character who is grounded and is realistic, because you'll see that one complaint a lot with films is that, oh, well, a normal person wouldn't do that. Well, Phil here does behave that way, and we do see what happens to him. That's why he comes up short, and having a grounded character in these kind of outlandish films, voodoo rituals, clone dinosaurs, and Star Trek, and it's important to have a character like that. And I think it's something a lot of modern films can learn from, because a lot of zany out there kind of films that are turned up to 11, they kind of neglect to have a character like this. Or if they do, they make them comic relief.
He's asking perfectly legitimate questions like, are we
Are we even
take
qualified
care
to
of a
handle
kid.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's kind of this running theme in the original trilogy. Everyone seems oblivious to Charles Lee Ray's reputation as a murderer. When Grace Zabriskie said, "Possessed by the spirit of Charles Lee Ray," who? Huh?
Yeah,
Oh, the Lakeshore Strangler.
well,
Now,
the
I
title,
think,
the title,
if
The
you're-
Lakeshore Strangler. It reminds me of Pauly Shore and Jury Duty. Do you have any preconceived notions about Carl Wayne Bishop, the drive-through killer? Drive-through who?
Yeah, it's I think if you're a serial killer to the point you've been named, it's sort of it's a bit weird that they haven't heard of him, particularly because I think it's still set in Chicago and Charles Lee Ray operated there. So because I kind of like that reaction. Yeah.
I also think the idea of a killer doll screaming "It's Chucky, it's Chucky, it's Chucky" over and over again for the last couple of years or whatever. I mean, the idea of a killer doll, I think, getting that kind of publicity to the point where the mum gets sanctioned would pretty easily drown out Charles Lee Ray, especially since he was killed by Detective Norris, and that did make headlines.
Yeah. Andy just had a picture of his mother. So his mother was played by Catherine Hicks. She actually went on to marry, you would have noticed his name in the credits, Kevin Yeager, who helped work on the prop of the doll. And she went on to have a long career with Seventh Heaven, the television show.
That's right, yeah. It was like a party of five thing, but they were all religious, weren't they?
Yeah, something
Seventh
along
Heaven, yeah. I never saw it. I think Channel 10 had it in Australia. I don't know what the network was in Yankville or anything like that. I do like the way Andy sort of takes in his surroundings here.
Yeah, it's a nice set. It's a nice house.
And I love how he never dropped his bag like at the doorway. Like he carries it with him because that's the only thing of like familiarity to him is what's in the case.
Yeah, it's really sad how he's ended up because he was, compared to the introductory scene in the first film, he's just so happy, and now he's in the foster care system. And I quite like this this moment here. That I'm not sure who the actress is who plays Joanne, but yeah, you just sort of see that look on her face when so the porcelain doll, her grandmother gave it to her mother, who gave it to her, and who will you give it to? And they just sort of look at each other. It's really sad.
Which leads to think that she was the one that was infertile between the two of them.
It's
but
really
it reminds me of that moment in Hunt for the Wilder People when Ricky Baker is talking to Heck, played by Sam Neill, talking about, I wonder why my mother gave me up. Oh, who knows? She was probably just young and wasn't ready, didn't know how to handle you. I bet she loved you, though. I find it quite strange. People who want children can't have them, and the people that do have them don't want them.
Yeah,
It's a bit like that. Before we go too far, I did want to say one thing about, because you mentioned the development of Andy Barclay over this course of this kind of saga that spawned into these TV series and things like that, and seeing an older one. I do appreciate the song that was used in the TV series. I think Netflix might have done. I can't remember who did the first season of that, but as he was driving away and he gives the thumbs up to the kids in the series, the song's called I'm Alive. So if you look up Chucky TV series I'm Alive, I thought that song was a very interesting choice lyrically for, it might have even been written to have Andy in mind, but as you were saying, like he was like such a happy-go-lucky kid in the first one, so eager to open up this toy, and you see what it's done to him in the moving on years, and how he's trying to adjust to this foster family and all of that. The fact that song plays as he's helping kids. They're not quite as young as he was in the first one. They're like adolescents at best, like 12, 13-year-olds. I love the idea. Like, I love how he leans out and just gives them the thumbs up, like the nightmare's over. I'll take it from here. Because he's never going to let that happen again. It's an awesome thing with him. He plays it so well, Alex.
Yeah. We just got our first introduction to Kyle, Christine Elise,
who also appears in the series, I might add. Yeah. And I quite enjoy this character. She's my favourite one in this film.
Yeah, because I mentioned I thought off and on over the years why they didn't bring back some of the other characters. I was thrilled to death to see Kyle in some of the later stuff.
And not to mention, like, she's just as gung-ho as he is. Like, she knows And she's also a fair bit older than him. Like, I believe he's in his, his 40s in the TV series, and you've got Kyle there. Like, she would be, like, well into her 50s. Like, if he's still...
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they say it. How old is Andy here?
Canonically, Kyle, I think, is 17 in this. So, yeah, you flash forward a few decades.
Yeah, so, yeah, she'd be about 50.
Because she mentions just a second ago, I'll be on my own next year.
Yeah,
So,
18, yeah.
Yeah.
Or it might even be older than that. Like, what is it? Like 21 in Yankville or whatever?
No, I think you can move out at 18, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, just do the Homer Simpson. When you're 18, you're out the door. I love dropping the boot into this thing, like this guy.
Yeah, and Chucky groaning just puts the icing on the cake.
Yeah, I know, and he's just giving it some. Like, totally oblivious. But I like to think a lot of us have had days like this. We just, we've been chewed out by our boss for circumstances outside of our control. We just want to go through the bottle-o, get a good deal, and get drunk for the night. Like, that's not too much to ask, is it?
Yeah, it's, I don't know who mentioned it, or where I heard it. Like, it's so, like what a time it was when some businesses wouldn't accept credit cards. Now, completely inverted. Some cash is still legal tender, but a lot of premises are becoming cashless. Like I was at Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, it's completely cashless. They don't accept cash at all in the entire stadium.
I love the outrage that happens. Like, people don't have digital bank accounts, that they don't buy stuff online with. Oh, they're getting rid of cash, they're coming after us, we're going to be a credit society and all this kind of stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, then you immediately turn around and swipe for your groceries. Like, why are you getting outraged? Like, God, it's just easier.
Yeah.
Like,
the design of the doll is a masterpiece. And again, I'll just touch on a few things. Like, they wanted the coveralls, the overalls, because a lot of these sort of dolls had that kind of utilitarian.
Not to mention, it almost harkens a bit of Super Mario, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And if you look carefully on the sleeves, there are these little like a little hammer and a little shovel and all that. And I think it was David
a screwdriver.
Kirshner. Yeah, they wanted like the Jack Nicholson hair with like the receding hairline.
I was just about to make a comment on that in the first one. When he's becoming more human, when he goes and sees his voodoo master, you'll notice that while it hurt, it bled like a son of a bitch and all this kind of stuff. You'll notice that his hairline starts to recede the way that Brad Douriff was in real life.
Yeah.
When he was playing Charles Lee Ray, and very quickly you'll notice that, because a plot point in this film is that he's aging like twice as fast this time around.
Yeah.
I don't believe the film truly explains that, but it doesn't really need to either. So he's on a much shorter leash this time. Even though he's playing a lot more viciously and he goes like on the offensive, he doesn't have the time frame that he did of the original film.
Yeah, well, he's on borrowed time. Like, he's like, even now, because in the hustle and bustle of the opening, they quickly mention that the company, to prove that it wasn't an evil doll, they managed to get it back and rebuild it. So, which unexpectedly gave him a second chance to catch up with Andy. It's this original trilogy, that it has a real purity to it. It has a very clear central story. Chucky has to get to Andy, where I think some of the later films it got a bit haphazard. So only two of the returning cast were in the original. You had Alex Vincent and Brad Douriff as the voice of Chucky, and it's something that I kind of thought about as a kid watching these films. I wonder why they never had a scene as him as a human again. You have that really cool shootout in the opening of the first film, and Brad Douriff is a phenomenal actor in his own right. It kind of always sort of was interesting to me that they never brought him back as a human, but he's everywhere in that TV series. Like I've only watched season one, but he's in like every second scene.
I believe his daughter, Fiona Douriff, plays the younger Charles Lee Ray in the flashbacks or whatever. Yeah. Nika is the character name. I think the actress is Fiona.
Yeah, that's right. It's his real life daughter.
Yeah. Nika is the character, but Fiona Douriff plays the young Charles Lee Ray, and with the long hair and all of that, and the overcoat, it works out very well, because I believe that Brad Dourif still does the dub voice over his daughter. She's the physical body, and he still does the voice over her.
Yeah, because I think she appeared in The Curse of Chucky or Cult of Chucky.
I get, Brad Dourif is an awesome actor. Like, he's almost like of the same caliber of, like, he's a couple of notches down of Nick Cage, I think. But I'm not gonna lie, like, the first few things that I saw Brad Dourif in, because I was born like a couple of years after these, he's been in more stuff that was a bit of a miss than good. But I do see why people have the appreciation for him that they do. I mean, he's got to be a fair age now as well.
It's all pure, because it's his real voice when you see him briefly as a human in the shootout in the toy store, and it's the exact same voice. There's a real sense of authenticity, like you truly believe he is inhabited in the doll. It's just phenomenal, and a real team effort to bring the character to life. It's just really incredible. I love reading about it and watching the people behind the scenes, how they brought him to life. Because originally the voodoo serial killer aspect wasn't there. Don Mancini's initial script for the first film was called Blood Buddies or Blood Buddy, and the gimmick of the doll was that it produced realistic blood. It could bleed if it was sort of hurt or dropped, and
Thank God for a rewrite. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you can then, and the gimmick was you could go buy a Band-Aid or a bandage for it, and sort of these spin-off products.
Similar to like the baby dolls that, go to the bathroom all the time and you got to clean up after them, like the training days. And
Andy was a bit more of a troubled kid. He wasn't as wholesome as he was.
Yeah, he was more of a Bart Simpson, wasn't he? Just a bit of a hoodlum.
Well, Chucky's killing people that, sort of crossed him, and it's good. I think so I think Don Mancini has kind of never warmed up to the voodoo serial killer, but he had no choice to accept it as he got more creative control going forward, because he co-wrote this with the director. Some of the changes was bringing in the voodoo aspect of it, and making Chucky a clear villain rather than a sort of manifestation of Andy's psychosis.
I was going to bring this up with Kyle because there's a scene coming up soon and we haven't really talked about it too much. It's something that you find interesting about rebellious sort of teenagers, like even ones that are still in-house with their own home. When you bring in a younger presence, the responsibility does kind of kick up a notch with them. Like, it's one thing to go from, oh yeah, well, I'm going to be out of here soon, I'll be on my own next year and all this kind of stuff. But when Andy comes along, and when they're when they're down in the laundry and all of that, like adults, they're supposed to do things that are bad for them and stuff like that. She starts to click that there's a bit more to it. But it's always interesting when there's like an only child and then a younger sibling comes in, the responsibility all of a sudden kicks up a few notches. I really like that about Kyle in this film. Like, she doesn't chew Andy out, and she does believe him at the same time. Like, she doesn't call him a liar when they go down. Thanks for getting me in trouble. Well, I didn't break it. She doesn't roast him over that either.
The whole family dynamic is great amongst all four of them.
Kyle totally steals the show in this, like, completely. And also, props to Phil here, like, because he doesn't totally crack it. I know he has the sort of rant when Andy is coming up out of the basement after doing the laundry, but it's only from a place of concern that his suspicions at the at the actual orphanage were correct. That Andy might need proper help from people who are qualified to deal with it.
Yeah, it feels great.
And I love Andy
always,
taking the cigarette. Yeah.
yeah, I always felt that this scene happened a lot later in the film, but no, when rewatching it, it happened quite early on.
Yeah. I got an older brother that gave me a ciggy when I probably shouldn't have had one.
It tastes like shit, okay?
Yeah. What did Eric Draven say in The Crow? Give these things up, they'll kill you. Well, just on that real quick, one of my favourite Leonard Nimoy quotes, and that there are many, when he was diagnosed with his lung cancer, he made a mention of, I quit smoking 30 years ago. By then it was 30 years too late.
Yeah,
There you go. So,
yeah, and Val Kilmer was another one, like people who worked with him, like always with the friggin' cigarette. You never saw him without one.
Yeah.
It was glued to his hand.
apparently Bon Jovi is another one that does it a lot as well.
Yeah, he didn't mind one or two. Yeah, just from sort of looking at him. In some of those.
Oh, like I'm not, like I'm not doing the whole, quit smoking if you're a smoker out there. Smoke if you want to smoke. It's your life. I don't really
Smoke
care.
'em. Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah, smoke if you got 'em. Dark Helmet style, mate. God, this is something that never really took off in Australia, but the kitchen top TVs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss that. Yeah, bring it back. Well, that's a microwave there, but like it's very prominent in films from the 90s and the 80s and all that, like your Cops and Robinsons, your cable guys, the kitchen top TV. Bring it back, I reckon.
Yeah.
Well, these days it'll just be a laptop or a tablet, I guess. I do like these one-on-one moments with Andy and the doll where, that people around him are talking about, like he's got to confront this and he needs help to deal with this. But I love how they're all talking about like a third party. Like he needs proper, like psychiatric help and all of that. I love how Andy just picks the doll up face to face, checks the batteries, and like he's grabbing the bull by the horns. Like, no one can really help me. Because we saw him talking to the shrink earlier when they were playing cards. Like, no one's going to help me through this. I've got to do this my own.
Yeah, it's really good writing. It's you're trying to get people to believe something unbelievable, and the checking the batteries is such a wonderful callback to. It's probably the best moment of the first film with Catherine Hicks.
I love that little breath. Just.
Yeah, and the little look that Chucky did a minute ago, trying to think of the name of the doll he buried.
Yeah, Tommy. I thought this is another great moment, like, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, I love, and that's the thing, like, you can have a film that's dark and bleak, but when the entire thing is that, you are going to upset a lot of people in the audience, because we know, like, what's the old saying? Like, you got to have a bad day to appreciate a good day. I love this moment between the two when Kyle just says, my turn, and Andy starts pushing her.
Yeah.
Because you can't help but think, like, that's the kind of thing that he would do for his mum, like when he makes breakfast in bed for his mum on his own birthday. That's very much an Andy trait that he hasn't lost. That kind of doing something for someone else, even when they haven't asked for it. Like she says, oh, no, you don't have to push me. No, I'll push you. It's, like, too late. Like, Andy's pushing Kyle on the swing. Like, it's a very sweet moment. And like, I love that kind of thing before everything goes out of control, because he has formed that kind of kinship with Kyle at this point.
Yeah, and like these movies are fun, particularly these first three movies in this trilogy, and yeah, Chucky's just having so much fun. It's almost it reminds me it's like the Wolf Creek movies. John Jarratt, like one of the things that why people are drawn to that character, as despicable as he is just how much fun he's having, terrorizing these people.
Which even he says when they try to psychoanalyze him in one of the TV series, "Man, I just like doing this kind of shit."
Yeah,
it's like all he says. Like, that's it. Like,
Chucky, like Chucky with his one-liners, and he has these inventive ways to off people. He was called the Lakeshore Strangler. And there's one or two stranglings in there, but he's got these really imaginative ways to off people.
Yeah, see, and one thing that I've always liked about Andy in this film, like when he ran back to pick him up and he lets Kyle win the race back to dinner, Andy totally still hasn't been sold yet. Like, even though the batteries are in there,
Yeah.
he's still not totally sold yet. And when the night happens, and it's really something like the relation, like what makes this such a powerful sequel is Andy, in a kind of roundabout way, does become sort of the guardian over Kyle, because when Andy gets taken out of the picture not long after this, and the doll is still in the house, you know, Kyle, she doesn't know that it's real yet or anything like that, but he does say, "Be careful, Kyle. It's still in the house."
Yeah.
So, like he's not screaming, it's Charles Lee Ray, it's Charles Lee Ray. He just flat out says he's still in the house. Just be careful. So
Yeah, it's surprising
he
maturity for such a little
becomes
kid.
he
He
becomes the
realizes
guardian. Yeah,
it's pointless to get people to believe him. It's now he now needs to give them good advice on surviving.
yeah. Like, just to show you how far it's come. Like there's no fooling Andy anymore. All he can do is just do that.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
such great acting for such a young kid.
I know,
That
it's
look he just
amazing.
gave, yeah, that look he just gave the doll is great. Kyle's quite bemused.
Kyle leaning down and the doll just going idle over Andy when all four of his limbs are tied spread eagle to the bed.
Yeah,
That's up there with the guy lighting the cigarette up next to the great white shark in Deep Blue Sea. Like, yeah, maybe not the best idea, champ. Like, I love
yeah.
Kyle all the world.
For a second, I thought you was going to say lighting up after they have the petrol fight in Zoolander.
Oh yeah, like when they, well, yeah, because they're playing with the petrol Bowsers, aren't they?
Yeah,
And then they light up cigarettes and they're covered in
yeah.
smoke. Oh god.
Um, so yeah, Christine Elise on that Chucky documentary talks about how she got the part of Kyle. She read for it initially and didn't hear back from him. And in the interim, she had done a stint, a small part on Baywatch and a few other shows, and yeah, was really building in confidence and establishing herself as an actress, and came back to read again and was much more confident and yeah, gave a better reading or gave a better audition, and yeah, that's how she won the part.
Oh well, as Christopher Lee would say, thank God for that decision.
Yeah, and
Uh,
once again, I was thrilled that she did come back.
because it's still her in the TV series, and I thought it was so awesome that she was there because she's just as invested in this. And you
Yeah,
know,
because it's so unexpected. Okay, Alex Vincent coming back, yeah, I'll buy that because he was such an integral part of the birth of the series. But then when because Kyle appears in the close, I think it's even in a it might have even been a post credit scene for one of the later movies of the 2010s, and yeah, just so unexpected. I never in a million years thought they'd bring her back, but yeah, good on them.
yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, no, I really do love Kyle. She's an awesome addition to this series.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that line that Annie Barclay says in the TV series. So you're a bunch of kids who survived a meeting with Chucky. Well, welcome to the club. It's a shit part to be it's shit to be a part of this club, but it's a good thing that you're still alive.
Yeah.
Me and my sister are gonna drive out and help you deal with this.
Yeah.
One thing that I do love about the development of Andy over his lifetime, because it's almost like Goku in a kind of a way. Like you follow him since he was a little boy to being a man to being well into the point where he should have grandchildren of his own. He's getting up there in age, not to make anyone feel old out there or anything. I love the fact that he takes that kind of stewardship to help those that do run into this kind of thing. And
Yeah.
one big component of these earlier films in this, like in the first three trilogy, the first three of this, is Charles needs to go into Andy's body, but it becomes a plot point in a later film that he can tell anyone because it's a new body that he's in, whoever he shares the secret with. So he doesn't need Andy anymore. But I love the fact the less Charles needs Andy is the more Andy needs to stomp Charles out. like you'll notice, like Charles does not need to body swap with a 45-year-old Andy Barclay anymore, but Andy is not done with Charles yet. Like, I know you're in that body. I'm going to kill you again. Like, you're not going to win. Full stop.
Yeah, and it's something that it's particularly acute to horror films. Fans of any franchise of any genre, love the actors and the characters and all that sort of stuff, and they want them to return. There's just something that's kind of sits uneasy with me, like in terms of horror, and it's like you take Scream for example. We all love Sidney Prescott and we all love how Neve Campbell plays her, but to keep bringing her back means she's just getting terrorized constantly and cannot move forward in her life. And at the end of Scream 3, where it's a big step for her to deliberately leave the door unlocked,
and she doesn't set the alarm either.
Yeah, it's like she's come such a long way from how we saw her at the start of that movie. But then, they bring her back for the fourth and the fifth, and just constantly.
To the point where fans legitimately want Sydney to be the next killer. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like,
yeah, and it's a similar thing, with Andy Barclay.
We need Child's Play 8, and Charles Lee Ray is already in Andy's body, running around killing people. You have totally lost the plot. You should be sanctioned.
Because he comes back in the final scene in Curse of Chucky, and the film, to its credit, does lean into that. How in Cult of Chucky, he's like in one of the opening scenes, he's on this date and it's not going well because he can't talk about anything. He can't talk about his childhood or what he's done for a living, and because they'll just think you're nuts. Like that feeling just kind of dogged him for the rest of his life.
Like, not to mention, when you've been isolated for so long, like, even when you do find good company, you still prefer your own. Like, not that it's bad or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, some people need to come out of their shell. Yeah. Not all the time, champ. It's like,
this is, it's Chucky trying to bargain his way out is piss funny. I promise I won't kill anyone. Now open the goddamn door.
Yeah, it reminds me of Scream 3. I was just trying to take the game to the next level. Now open the fucking door, Christine. Beth Grant here, who, needs no real introduction. I mean, just about anything you could think of. She's almost like Kevin Bacon in a way, has been connected to something else. One of the things that she pops into my head constantly over was she was the supermarket owner in the 2006-7 series Jericho.
Yeah, okay.
Beth Grant.
Speed, Donnie Darko.
Yeah, Speed, Donnie Darko, The Wizard. She has a lot of connections to just about she's... I mean...
And this is one of the most memorable deaths in the whole franchise.
With the meter ruler, the blackboard ruler, yeah. Yeah,
I believe she was kind of umming and ahhing about being in a horror film, but this is such a cool sequence. It's something I really remember watching as a kid.
Yeah, he stabs her in the gut with the air pump for the basketballs, doesn't he? He injects her with air. To cripple her, and then he beats her to death with a meter ruler.
Yeah.
Jesus. If I may say so without being prosecuted.
He's, I remember. And also what Chucky wrote on Andy's test paper.
Fuck you, bitch.
I remember as a kid watching that. I remember a moment clearly. I was in like grade 2 or 3 after I'd seen the film, just sitting at my desk and smiling on the inside, because you just knew there were words you're not meant to say. And I just kept thinking, what Chucky wrote on his paper.
Yeah, I was a bit like that. Like, I'm a bit removed from this. I was born a couple of years after this came out. Yeah, and in my mind, what always popped into my head, because I wasn't meant to play it, but Mum picked it up for me anyway, was Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of the kind of swearing and naughty jokes in that, like the the password to get into the Rock Solid nightclub in the Drunken Gits chapter is fellatio.
Yeah, right.
And I
yeah.
had no fucking idea what that meant when I was a kid in 2001. And when I play through that game now, I'm like, oh my god, no wonder Nintendo distanced themselves from this shit. Like they want nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And Andy does something really smart. He runs away. Because it's that thing. It's always with sort of horror movies. Why didn't you just run away? Which is what sort of happens in real life.
Well, he can't get out of the door, and when she gets stabbed by the air pump, she drops the keys. So Andy had no choice but to take the window.
Yeah, hightail it. Bug out, call it a day.
Just do the Marlon Wayans in a haunted house. Oh, hell no, I'm out. Just get the fuck out of there, man.
Yeah, let me know when the Space Pampers come in.
Do you remember that moment in the AVP video game on the PS3 and the Xbox 360 when you're holding the fort at that like kind of checkpoint when you're playing as the Marine and you've got that one private with you? Oh yeah, we got another squad coming in to help you out, and then your friend, your ally says, tell them to hurry the fuck up, Corporal. It's a little bit like that. Like, let's get out of there. Yeah, I love how Phil just gives her some now. Like now it's turning into something else. But one thing I found interesting on the rewatch was the death of the teacher isn't actually mentioned in-house. Like, that news doesn't break at all over the course of this film.
Yeah, so I suspect, because those lingering shots of the exterior of the school, everyone's gone home for the day, I suppose. They'll probably find her, the next morning.
And I believe Phil dies tonight, I think. So the film just keeps clipping along at a very well-off pace. So essentially, it happens over, like, what, a Monday and a Tuesday.
And it's I really like the way Phil's death was handled as well. Discovers the truth, only it's too late.
Which needed to happen to one of them. The stepmother's death happening off screen, although that's a fair ways away. I did used to think, oh, well, it's kind of bad we didn't see that because she was kind of on board with Andy, but after she tells Andy to stay away from her, that death needed to happen off screen to sell Kyle on the fact that Chucky is real. Like when you hear the sewing machine like clicking away as Kyle comes up the hallway, right then and there, she's already sold before she's even seen him in action. It's an awesome moment for her character, and I'm glad they didn't rob it of her at all. They let her go into that blind by sacrificing the mum. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's a great, that whole sequence. Well, it's a great sequel, like full stop. It's more than a worthy successor to the first film. And
this is right up there with like Jaws 2 for me. Like I know everyone's like, oh, Jaws didn't need a sequel. I know it didn't, but it got one anyway. I rank that, like I'm a big fan of Jaws 2. Like the only non-returning element of Jaws 2, I believe, is Steven Spielberg. John Williams, I believe, came back and did the score for the second one as well.
Yeah, okay.
Like with his rendition of Downtown and all of that. I've got a lot of time for Jaws too. Like, it doesn't make much sense for a guy to live on an island who hates the ocean. It only looks like an island if you look at it from the ocean. So that, like, Amityville and all that kind of stuff. Amity Isle. This is a very solid number, I think. Like your Psycho 2s and your Jaws 2s and what else is there? Like Lost in New York, it's a very solid sequel, I think, a number 2. It's not overly dependent on what came before. It's not trying to recapture what came before. It's trying to develop something new in the vein of what came before, which is the real code, I think, of a sequel.
Yeah, very much so. Well said.
Yeah. Most of the time I'm just talking out of my ass or sticking my hand in it.
How's it hanging, Phil? Oh, no, that's a little bit later, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, well, what I mean by that in the same vein is, like, a lot of people say, it needs to go back to basics. It needs to go back to the tone and the setting of the original. No. What I mean by in the same vein of the original is the vein being Andy, the catalyst of the original film, is not Chucky, it's Andy. If you take Andy out of that film, Chucky doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that was pretty much decided from day dot. So, the the first film did really well,
Yeah.
and the sequel was greenlit, within a week, and shortly after that, like Andy Barclay was returning. It was
Non-negotiable. That needed to
pretty
happen.
much, yeah, that was the strong through line they had, yeah. The other characters, like we talked about with the mother and that at the start of the film, were kind of negligible.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like, yeah, that's the real crux of a sequel, I think. Like, I know the James Cameron same thing but different. This, I think, is neither of those. Like, I think this is just different. The same being, it's like it's Chucky, it's Charles Lee Ray. That's about it. Like, I think the different is where it really needs to be. Like, and that's what I mean in the same kind of vein. Like, what seems to happen with a lot of sequels is they overcook and undercook the wrong elements, and the sequel just comes out as a greatest hits reboot, or it's a, some people like to call things a soulless cash grab, although I don't think everything that comes out is. Like, they say soulless cash grab like the original film that came out wasn't designed to get your money.
Yeah.
You
Every
know?
big studio film is designed to get your money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Jurassic World, it's a soulless cash grab. What in Jurassic Park was not engineered with a marketing team and a demographic audience to get your money.
Yeah.
You know,
Jurassic World, I'd forgotten this. That was the third highest grossing film of all time when it came out.
yeah. Well, it was
Yeah.
well, it was designed that way, and you're a muppet if you went and saw it. One thing I wanted to point out here, just to steer away from Jurassic, was the fact that Chucky actually bites Andy's ear here.
Yeah, he's not above that. He bites Andy's mother in the first film as well, and he's giving away the size advantage. You got to use everything you can, I suppose. Poor Phil. I mean, he's just trying to get through the day, isn't he?
Yeah, like Phil reminds me of. Do you remember the receptionist from Orange County? When they drive out to Stanford, we need to speak to the dean of admissions. Well, it's 10:30 at night, and he's not here. He's gone home for the day. Can you give us his address or his phone number, guys? Look, I've been filing all day. I just want to go home.
Yeah. And Chucky here utilizes a really good weapon in his arsenal. He can just go lifeless. He can just fake it.
Yeah, I do like the way Phil plays this.
Yeah, he's great.
I don't think he thinks Andy's going to hurt him, but I do think he thinks Andy is unhinged.
Yeah, or gonna hurt himself.
Yeah, I don't think at all that Phil was worried for his own safety by Andy holding the knife. He was worried for Andy's, like a real kind of paternal figure would.
Yeah. How's it hanging, Phil? Oh my god. Oof.
Yeah, and to have your horrors confirmed before it happens,
Yeah.
like, yeah, which was a really big thing back in the day, like with your Nightmare on Elm Streets and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah. These yeah, the 80s slashers, like what a time to be alive if you were into that, with Halloween and Freddy and Jason.
Like when you think about that, like this film, like its theatrical release date was 1990, which means the production was 89 or 88 at the earliest.
Yeah, so the first film, for an original property, it was very good because 1988 got a lot of sequels, Halloween 4, and there was a Friday the 13th one, and the only one it did better than all of them except for Nightmare on Elm Street 4, I think, which I think is the most successful one to date. So United Artists were really high on this. They really saw a lot of longevity in this property, and which was proven to be true when it changed hands and went to Universal. It just keeps on soldiering on. It keeps trucking on. But they never seem to, astonishingly, Don Mancini, who wrote the original script, he's had a hand in all of them. I think he's written or co-written everything. It's such a interesting property to read about and talk about, and to just the life it's had. I don't think it's really a spoiler per se, But the television series is in its third season. And I think I read somewhere Chucky finds his way into the White House. Of course he does. After 30 years, it's either, he's going to go into outer space next because he has to, right? Um, just the way it's evolved and adapted and changed with the times is remarkable.
But it's also a series that loans itself to that, though.
Yeah.
Like, you don't question it because it is inherently in the DNA of central, like, namesake character. Like, Chucky, I mean, like, he could come back as a fucking Ken doll and you wouldn't question it.
Yeah. And a lot of ideas he had eventually manifested. I thought, because I think an early idea was to have Chucky possessing multiple good guy dolls at the same time, which eventually found its way in.
Yeah, it was meant to be like the fucking clone army on Camino. I love the look that Kyle gives that thing underneath the stairs.
Yeah,
like, oh,
she's
yeah.
so great.
Yeah, I know. She, like, without her, this film does not work. I'm telling you that now. Like, Alex Vincent is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but the addition of Kyle, I mean, it's like epoxy, man. Like, you need both chemicals to set the glue, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like that moment in Die Hard with a Vengeance. Either one on its own, you get nothing. But you mix them, bang! Is how it works. Like, you needed Kyle to do this, and I love going to the swing and just lighten up. Just like, I mean, have a shot. Go and have a whiskey sour or whatever you do to take the edge off, mate. If you're not on the clock. Like,
and the plot point from earlier, discovering the vanquished doll. It's
and
so
also,
great.
the reason Andy,
really strong.
Yeah, the reason Andy didn't discover it is because he's too short for the swing. Whereas Kyle, she has to lift her legs up, and because she's not doing that, she's kicking it back and forth. You'll notice when Andy was pushing her on the swing, he had to run back a couple of steps and really run in to push her. So when Andy was on the swing just twirling around, his feet weren't touching the ground.
Yeah.
She's just doing it on her own now, and she discovers where Tommy went.
Yeah, this is great.
And that right there. And I love shadowing out the mouth, even though she's smoking in the scene. Shadow out the mouth when she looks over and you only see her eyes just looking at the bin. Like,
yeah, this is great.
It's one of my favorite things. I can always say who my favorite actors are and, like, actresses are. If they can get you on a look, you've got a winner. Like, for me, one of my all-time favorite actors is Val Kilmer. And people will say things like, oh, is that because of Tombstone? Is that because of, Top Gun? Is that because of, Batman? No, it's none of those. There's a moment in The Ghost in the Darkness when he takes the doctor's rifle and he lines up one of the lions. He goes to shoot it, the rifle clicks, and then his eyes just go wide. His face doesn't change, but his eyes just go, I'm dead. Like, it's
great.
The way, like, you really nail an actor or an actress if they can sell you on a look. When she turned around then to look over at the bin, that's a winner, man. Gets my seal of approval.
Yeah, and even the response, discovering the trash can is empty. This is top quality stuff here.
Yeah, come on. Load up. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the fishing knife.
Yeah. Well, a fishing net, like, what is a fishing net? Like, it's meant to get the, like, lures and tackles out of fish, isn't it?
Yeah, you can gut and gill a fish, I think.
Yeah, gut them and get the hooks out of them and stuff like that. Like, I haven't gone fishing in a long time. Like, I probably can't even remember how to cast a line. To be honest with you. Borderline 11.
Yeah, a 10. No, it's borderline 11.
I love the angular carpet as well, the indoor. Like, I know some houses in Australia for the time do have that and some still do. Like, indoor staircases. Like, I had a few friends that had them. But by and large, they are pretty rare. Or at least in this part of the country, they are. Down here. Indoor staircases. Yeah, the clicking of the sewing machine. Yeah, oof.
Yeah, and as a kid, I couldn't quite grasp how So he slashed her throat, didn't he?
Yeah, he slit her throat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you see or you hear the click, click, clicking, and it kind of throws you off.
she was
Exactly what
mending.
happened
Yeah,
to her.
she was mending a dress for Kyle earlier when Phil was in the room. And you notice the red ball of thread that was on the staircase. There's a pink ball of thread on the counter next to her
Yeah.
now,
Okay.
on the desk. Yeah, so he gagged her. So God knows what he was saying to her or anything like that. Yeah, the rising sheet.
Yeah, that's a great moment. How he's hidden in the bed.
One thing I was meant to make a mention of, like the more he becomes human, I know it's a little bit hit and miss sometimes with people, but I've always had this belief: the more that he becomes human, the more he gets adult male strength back, like full-grown men strength back, which is why people have such a hard time throwing a little doll off of them. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you could argue that, oh, he's just got a good grip on him and he's got him from behind, but I like to think the more human he becomes, he regains his old physical strength in the doll body. So he's, even though he's still a doll, he's got the physical strength of a grown man.
yeah. He's a real handful, despite his stature, and I think he gets a lot of his power from the fact
Like, case in
he just
point,
suddenly comes alive.
yeah,
So people are just in shock, and he's able to overpower them easy.
well, case in point, what makes me back up that theory that he's as strong as a human full-grown man is, well, not only did he just completely ankle tap Kyle just then, but there was that moment where he's had an arm blown off and a leg blown off. He falls out of an air vent and with only one limb, like one arm and one leg, manages to best Detective Norris's partner in the
Yeah,
first one. So I do think his physical strength does return
yeah.
the
Chris,
longer he's in that body.
yeah, she's got great chemistry with this doll.
I love how he says, "Oh, fuck it, pull over." Like
Yeah,
when she just flat out says, like it's a cop, we're doing the limit, and then he just goes limp. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, my favorite one was always when she's nursing it like a baby, and the camera comes from behind Kyle, and the knife drags
yeah.
down her spine. Yeah, that was always my favorite. I like your gun. I mean, so why not do it both ways sometimes, even simultaneously?
Terrific scene. I like
I was going to
the
say,
moments they choose to use the proper doll voice or use Brad Dourif's voice. Yeah, Chucky.
I was
And
going
the
to
cop
say,
is so oblivious. Yeah, go on.
yeah, no, sorry. Didn't mean to jump. I was going to add to that real quick. I do like the if it's going to use the regular doll's voice, like "I like to be hugged," or if they're going to have Brad Dourif say "I like to be hugged." So like I love it when he bungs those lines on. What I was going to say, like the piercing blue eyes. Like I know, like evil and chilling. You go for unnatural sort of eye colors, like your reds and your purples and your greens, like your emerald greens and stuff like that. There's always been something unnerving about pale blue piercing eyes for me, like those kind of like Russian-esque, like native eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you look at the androids from Dragon Ball Z, like 16, 17, 19, and 20 and all that kind, like they all have these ice blue pale eyes. Like even Trunks makes a mention of, like, it's those eyes. There's something about those blue eyes, like Meg Foster as evil in He-Man, probably best example of a lot, like those icy blue pale eyes that are just
Yeah.
so piercing. Like you get where I'm going before I jerk off over it. Yeah.
Yeah, Meg Foster in anything really. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oof. But like those blue eyes, like what do you think about that? Like, do you think you in total agreement with where I was going with that, or what? There's just something alien about it. Haven't been able to quite put my finger on it. Like even Cell's
It's a
second
good
form has
point.
blue eyes, ice blue eyes.
Yeah, there's another great example of that is the others from A Song of Ice and Fire, or the White Walkers. in the adaptation. Their most distinctive feature is pale blue eyes.
Yeah, these icy blue eyes.
They're set up to be, the ultimate evil for the whole saga. There's another great line a second ago. Shut up and drive, or I'll kick your fucking teeth in. And the look Kyle just gives him. That's one I always remembered as a kid as well.
Yeah, Kyle. I suppose these days having a woman named Kyle, it'd be what, woke or anti-male, I guess.
I didn't realise.
There's a lot of names that can go both ways, man.
Yeah, I wrongly assumed it was just a boy's name, but no, apparently not. So I like the name. It's a good name.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome name is what it is. I love that moment with Andy when he gets up and runs to the door. Oh, it's on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you see kids going through this that are older than him, younger than him, and all of that, but he knows what he has to do.
Yeah.
Like a case in point, like earlier in the film, like when he was playing cards with the shrink, talking makes the nightmares go away. Like when he sees Kyle at the bottom of those stairs, he knows what he has to do to make the nightmares go away. Like, heavy burden for such a young boy, yeah.
Yeah, just the look they give each other here. They know the score now. All the stakes have been set up heading into the third act.
So this is the end game, yeah.
And I do like how...
Get a lot of history about Kyle here as well. Like, oh, did you do this? Oh, she's a troublemaker. And all of that. And when Kyle gets locked out of the room, I love how desperately she pounds on that door to get back in. Like, yeah.
And it's funny the lines that stay with you. I always remembered Chucky's line as a kid. Amazing, ain't it?
Amazing, ain't it? Yeah. Oh, yeah, and the photocopier death as well, yeah. Not to mention, it's still doing scans of, like, the bloodshed. And also, you'll notice that Chucky hung on the inside of the lock while Kyle ran out. Her body weight is what got him to be able to lock the door.
Yeah.
Like, really cool little blink and you miss it moment there. Oh, fire engines are the most awesome things in the world, I swear. You know, it's funny. I love this. There's a New Zealand show called 7 Periods with Mr. Gormsby, and there's a moment where the headmaster locks himself in the office and the staff are trying to get to him. And the guidance counselor, who's like just your regular built man, says, okay, everyone, back away. He gets ready to charge it, and then Gormsby stops and goes, do you want to break a shoulder, man? It's going to take like a charging rhino to knock a door down. Like, that's only for the movies. Like that shit. Like you'll need reconstructive surgery on your shoulder if you try to shoulder barge it.
Yeah.
Like why doesn't Kyle just slam into it? That's for the movies. Like knocking down a door, man. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
I love how she gets in the car and just floors it because the car behind her is open.
Yeah.
It's still like you see that with the door, yeah. No, just get in there and go for it. I love how Chucky went out through the windscreen. Because the seatbelt won't work on him. He's too small. Like, you need a booster seat like a baby.
Yeah, well, she told him to buckle up, right?
Yeah, fucking smack. Yeah, the yellow hydrants. Well, the reason, like, there's no fire, but the fire engines are there because the fire alarm was pulled.
Yeah.
I believe when a fire alarm is triggered, like even back in these early days, like the firehouse is immediately alerted no matter what. Like phone calls made or nothing. Yeah, no, they don't need a phone call. Like they know where to go.
It's all automated now, I think. Yeah, in a lot of public places and probably public institutions as well.
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for firefighters. Like I love law enforcement and all that kind of stuff. Like those guys. I mean, like. One of these days they might be the only thing, mate, between you and a bullet. Like firefighters, they're running into burning buildings while you're trying to run out.
I've always been fascinated with them as well, and it's funny. like this movie set in Chicago, and so probably the most famous firefighter movie, Backdraft, I think that's in Chicago as well, from memory.
Yeah, like I think about things like Firestorm and Ladder 49 and
Yeah,
just, yeah, no, I've got a lot of respect for firefighters in particular. Like, just, wow, good
yeah,
stuff you guys do, man. Yeah, yeah, this delivery bloke here with the newspapers giving Kyle a piece of his mind
yeah,
when he pulls her up. Uh,
yeah. And these bit part characters in movies are so great that, like the
yeah.
Terminator one, what the hell, god damn son of a bitch.
Yeah, you crazy bitch. Well, one of my favourite Terminator ones was always, hey, I can close early today.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, he's looking forward, like, he's only concerned about the sale.
yeah.
Like,
Hey,
he's
hey
not,
man, you've the other one in the phone booth, you got a serious attitude problem.
yeah, you know, you got the very negative attitude.
Yeah. There was a idea early on in development to set this at Christmas time. Not necessarily make Christmas be part of the plot, but just
Well, it
as a
was a
seasonal
birthday
movie,
in the
because
first one, yeah.
it had a seasonal release date of November initially, but another slasher Christmas themed movie was coming out at the same time, so they kind of altered it slightly as like after a year or so of bad PR, like this is the good guy making its big comeback, which explains all this we're seeing. Whereas I think the initial idea early on was this is their big Christmas push for sales, and and the maze filled with Chucky is like psychologically it's got to be so draining for Andy and Kyle in this final battle because
Well, not to
he's everywhere.
mention, by the time Andy and Kyle leave this factory, it's well and truly daybreak. So they
Yeah,
haven't had a good night's sleep in almost 2 days
yeah,
going through this. But I also love the desperate kind of maternal big sister kind of relationship that Kyle takes on with Andy here, and that she never lets go of his hand when they're
yeah,
running through the maze.
yeah,
Like when he falls down, she runs behind him, pushing his back, and
yeah,
like she really goes out of her way to be very protective
yeah,
of him, like showing her carefree nature with her boyfriends and her smoking, just how far she's come with the
yeah. She grows a
realization
lot
that this doll
over
is
the
real. Like
film.
over the
Yeah,
case of, like we're talking about like a matter of hours. Like sometimes that's all it takes to change a person.
yeah.
Um,
I think I read somewhere Damballa, this god or
yeah.
deity he's invoking, is real in some cultures.
I found it interesting that the cantation goes to English. Give me the power, I beg of you.
Yeah,
Like, why not just say that in the language that it's meant to be in?
yeah, the Damballa chant. I
Yeah,
tried to learn it phonetically once. I didn't get very far.
I tried to learn it as well in preparation for this discussion, but
Who has time, eh?
yeah.
Who has time?
It's like what Michael Bay did at the Samsung press conference one time. He walks out on set and goes, "Teleprompter's fucked. We'll wing this." Yeah, we'll just wing this. um, yeah, Dewey Dembella, or whatever it is. I always found it interesting. I know, like, is it called English or something like that when Japanese do it? Like sometimes the Japs work in some English dialogue in their cantations and all that kind of stuff. I always found it interesting. I probably should have looked it up before we started talking about this. Then you do this kind of voodoo Hindu sort of Baron Samedi sort of chant, and then you speak in English. Give me the power, I beg of you. I always found that interesting that
Yeah,
that was the phrase.
it's a really cool, sinister sounding chant.
Yeah. Give me the
Um,
power, I beg of you. And this otherworldly kind of, almost like Moloch from like Behind the Rose, almost just suddenly comes up. Like you're not just doing like an essence transfer, you're doing a conjuring in a sort of a way. It's very sinister,
yeah.
how it sounds.
So
Um,
so it's established he's too much time has passed and he can't transfer anymore, or
Yeah,
or did the ritual not be completed?
he flat out said it's not going to work. He's been in there too long.
Yeah, okay.
So this goes to, it reminds me of what Piccolo says, again, when Vegeta kills the Cyberman that refuses to fight. Piccolo has that one moment where he has this thought bubble. Okay, well, the little Saiyan, the way the big Saiyan takes orders from the little Saiyan, and the way the little Saiyan just killed one of his own men, he's not taking prisoners. We're fighting for our lives now. Similar deal here. Like, when he realizes that the ritual doesn't work because he's been in there too long, because for some reason or another, because he doesn't have a voodoo mentor to explain to him how it's working, my guess is, or my hypothesis on it is, this kind of refurbished body that he has, it ages twice as fast.
Yeah.
So he had a week in the first one. He's only got 2 days this time around. So it doesn't work. In which case, it's not about taking Andy's body. It's about just causing as much harm as you can before you're found out. So kill both of them while you can. So this isn't about survival anymore. This is just about, causing as much pain and suffering as you can before you're killed.
Yeah, okay. This is such a gruesome moment with the hand. Ugh.
Yeah. And see how Kyle, just grabs Andy's shoulders and just, she's got a lot of physically protective traits over, holding his hand and all of that. I love all those beats. Like anyone out there who's a younger sibling knows exactly what I'm talking about. When that kicks into high gear. Yeah, I always thought the hand got skinned from memory, but when I watched it early in the week, no, the whole hand comes off in the grate, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great effect and so gruesome.
And so he's a lefty now. I'm not left-handed. You are, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Is it really as weird as what people think it is?
Yes.
Yeah, no, all right. Yeah, no.
I would. Oh, but you come up with tricks to get past it. Like, I would kill for a left-handed ledger until I was clever enough. You just flip it around and write from the back cover.
Yeah, like a manga. You read it from back to front.
Yeah. Because, reading and writing a lot, it always annoys me because your hand is on the spiral. So what you do is you flip it up and just write from the back to the front.
I had
little tricks for lefties like that. You learn as you go through life.
It's funny. I had a friend in high school when we were going through, because we did creative arts a lot. I did both courses of arts in my senior year, so I was in the art studio 6 times a week, or I was up in the computer lab 6 times a week, and that's just how it was. I was either on a keyboard or I was on a drawing pad, and my friend was left-handed, and he said, and I remember asking him that same question, is it as weird as people say it is to be left-handed? And then he's like, it fucking annoys me so much, because drawing left-handed, everything that I'm drawing, I'm smudging it and smearing it, so my cleanup is twice as long because my palm keeps resting on it. He's like, count your blessings, you're right-handed, because being left-handed, as cool as you people think it is, it ain't all that easy.
Yeah, I had some problems growing up with smudging as well, where I got chipped. I got chipped a lot for it.
Just drawing, resting on it all the time. Yeah, I never thought of that, because when you're right-handed, you can always work outwards from where you're going. But when you're left-handed, you're working, but you're crawling into what you're working on.
Yeah, that's right.
So he was like, it's not that easy, especially if you're into illustrations and all of that, or handwriting and things like that. It's very tricky to make it work for you.
They're such ambitious shots, the way Chucky can move and walk. And
I love the center rep who just comes out. This is me sometimes out at work. I get the toolkit out. So, all this guy needs to say is, so I heard your old lady kicked you out. Yeah. Talk to me. Tell me where you like it. But I guess this harkens back to the opening where the eyes went in and it electrocuted someone. We had to have someone get killed with fake eyes getting pushed in. I mean,
Yeah,
come on. Like, you can't set up the audience like that and not give them that, you know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I just love climaxes, film climaxes in factories. Full stop.
Like
I don't care
Terminator.
what. Yeah, well, I don't care what factory it's whatever
I
it's
was going to ask
manufacturing.
you about that. Like, what were your thoughts on it being a factory? But you're getting there now.
Yeah, it's a great set piece. It's surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of dolls. It's really cool.
One thing that I like about this, not only with the dolls, it's something that Kyle says in Terminator when he starts turning on like all the automated machinery, so the Terminator can't scan for movement. Same deal here, but the opposite, and that is because they're in a manufacturing warehouse for good guy dolls. It's not dead silent, like Dead at Night, like a Scream movie. So they can't hear for Chucky running around either with all this machinery going on. So it
Yeah.
works both ways. So they can't hear if he's sneaking up or hiding at all. They've really got to play it by sight whenever he turns up. Because we got all these things happening around us. Like, look at that. Like, they
Yeah.
couldn't even notice that. I mean, like, they would never have heard that coming.
Oof.
Because something else got jammed. Oh, yeah, the hair puncher.
Yeah. Yeah, because the technicians at the start of the film who are restoring him allude to that they're now mass produced and they don't make them by hand.
One thing that I love about that puncher moment, it reminds me of Black Sheep when he puts up the vote for Al Donnelly sign and then he shoots the fucking nail gun through his hand. Ah! um, yeah, I love this kind of fusion. One thing that caught me off guard was the amount of like falsities, like false reliefs that he was gone. Like you get this kind of tender sort of moment with these two after they saw what it did to the original doll, what it's doing to him in there and his screaming. And I love how Andy uses the buttons for this. Yeah, rightio, it's done. They walk away and then fucking bang, that wasn't even him. Um,
Yeah.
you know? Oh no, he lost his legs. His legs are there. So he was cut in half.
Well,
Yeah,
Aries.
well, he comes back with robot legs. He's Darth Maul now, apparently. Which I find so fascinating when people say, how can you survive getting stabbed with a lightsaber? Oh, Darth Maul was so cool in that cartoon series. What the fuck? People, choose your battles wisely. Oh my god. But I do love the idea of his feet, like his feet there with the bare legs that aren't clothed yet from
Yeah.
the other dolls and the blood. Yeah, he was cut in half. Or he lost his legs, or, you get it. And like still holding his hand, like I'll never get, yeah, and stroking the face and all, yeah, awesome acting. I want to know how much stage direction that is, or script, or who do we have to thank for this? And as soon as Kyle becomes the one in danger, because she's going up into the furnace press, like Andy just fucking goes full gear now, doesn't he?
This
Yeah.
is great.
You're discharged, Sarge. The bladed hand, like how he shoves the blade into the right wrist, it reminds me of, do you remember Gruber from Quest from Camelot? When
Oh yeah. Yeah.
he fuses his hand with Excalibur? It reminds me a little bit like that, yeah, the bladed hand. Yeah, and this is something I really wanted to say was I appreciate the restraint in not giving Andy another like sort of one-liner. Friends to the end. Remember, this is the end, friend. I love how Andy just grabs the wrench and turns it on. No words are spoken. Like
Yeah.
just like what else needs to be said? Like Andy knows what needs to be done. He's not screwing around. Like no, like none of this. Not bang. You're done. You're gone.
Yeah.
You're out.
Yeah, it's so important to give Andy the killing blow as well.
Yeah, but I just love how taking care of business. Like this whole movie was Andy taking care of business. He's got to learn how to do it. No witty one-liner, no snap back, no nothing. Just bang, you're gone.
Yeah, and it's stretching it a bit now. He comes back yet again, doesn't he?
Yeah, I was gonna say I did appreciate the first one. The second one, I was
Yeah,
like, I didn't even remember the second one. It had been that long. I
yeah,
was like, fucking hell, man. Like, nah. When people give sequels the thumbs down because of things like this, I do understand where they're coming from. Like, I like a lot of sequels, but this was just bullshit. This, like, I think, honestly, if you ask me, I think the only reason they did this was because when the body comes out and grabs the partner of Norris in the first one, they
yeah,
needed to one up it one more time. Is what I think to before people could have a break. I think like
yeah.
because he comes back like 2 times in the first one, so let's make it 3 times in this one. Why not? Yeah, bang.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. Well, that hit the spot. Yeah, you're discharged, Sarge. Heidi ho. Can I just say, I love the compliments of blue and yellow on the jacket that Andy wears. Like, blue and yellow is just such an interesting color combination. Like, one of the alternative skins of Blanca was instead of the orange hair and the green skin, it was yellow hair and the blue skin.
Yeah,
I don't think that was his turbo look, but it's a great color palette, the blue and the yellow. And I do love this line. Where do we go now? We go home. The obvious question is, where's home? But I love how we don't get a follow up to that. It just ends with Kyle saying, "We go home."
yeah. It's kind of yeah, ambiguous,
Yeah,
and yeah,
beautiful.
that's where we leave them for the time being.
Nah, excellent choice, man. Nah, straight up. Yeah, there we go again in the credits. Alex Vincent, top billing. Yeah, Christine Elise. Nah, good work. Good work is all I can say. Oof. Yeah, mate. So, what do you think? You've gone through the Chucky kick this week. What are your closing thoughts on this, and what you've gathered through your book?
Yeah, I really love the first three movies. Yeah, the original trilogy's really good. I considered watching Child's Play 3 tonight, and I had such a good time watching them back to back to back a couple of Saturdays ago. Then I swung back to maybe watching the first film tonight and discussing it, and I probably will get around to them. One night we'll talk about them properly, but because yeah, I think the original trilogy still holds up, and I quite like the one number three when they go to the military school, but I do understand some of the criticisms of it are valid because they're kind of stuck there. Whereas in this film and in the first film, where it like the foster house and then at the school and then at the factory. So I quite,
Like the
I
changing of sets, yeah.
yeah,
It,
don't get me wrong. I still really enjoy the one at the military school, but hearing that during the week, I think yeah, I'll have to concede that is a good that is a good comment to make. And the first film is unbelievable. It's so well executed.
uh,
They really caught lightning in a bottle, and it wasn't fluke. It was a lot of hard work and effort, starting from the script. The Don Mancini submitted a script, and it was nowhere near ready to film. It went through a lot of revisions, and a lot of people had their own ideas
yeah.
to really shape and mold it into what it became. So it's a real team collaborative effort. And even just the credits just before, like the Chucky puppeteers, there's like 9 or 10 of them.
Yeah,
So
there's
it's
like, 20 people have to make this thing work. I was going to
yeah,
make a mention of that when Beth Grant got killed. Well, like, the actual puppet is walking. Like, they
yeah,
very rarely show that, unless it's like a child in costume. Like, I know they have sort of cracked the code with things like Megan that have come out in recent years. But back then, there was kind of no other way to do it. One thing about Child's Play 3 that I will say was I think it was very appropriate and a correct decision to make a time skip so Andy wasn't a child anymore. Like, I know they had to recast it and that kind of stuff, but I think who they chose was brilliant, and jumping it 10 years was the only way to really do it. On the time frame that they wanted to really separate this from what came before, which is what fans say they want, a time skip is what was definitely needed for Child's Play 3.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, number three, because in the Life with Chucky documentary, that's the one they spend the least amount of time on. They barely give it 2 or 3 minutes. You got the impression that, well, I got the impression anyway, that they thought they made a misstep recasting him, but they had no choice. Like you said, they had to do a time skip, and because it
For that story, they needed to.
It came quickly after this one, like within a year.
Which means it was already in pre-production by the time this was wrapping.
Yeah, they were so high on this movie. I think, like within like the advanced screenings or the early previews, like in-house internally, this story impressed a lot of like decision makers within the production companies. Like I think one of the quotes I read somewhere was like one of the executives would he went up to the creators and said, "I've only got 3 words: Child's Play 3." And yeah, Child's Play 2 was greenlit within the week of the first one coming out. They finally saw this is our big opportunity to compete with the heavy hitters like Michael Myers and those sorts of guys, and it's out sort of lived them, like in a way.
Who were well and truly into their third and fourth sequels by that point. Sometimes fifth and sixth as well.
Yeah, and because it plays to its strengths. Like we know how, Chucky was created. We know Charles Lee Ray, and like there's a purity. Like I mentioned, there's a strong through line. There's a strong central core. Whereas, because one of the things that interests me now, like you look at Halloween, for example, and I remember Rob Zombie's films, his remakes, they were really well received when they came out. They got good reviews. Now everyone hates them because it didn't lean into its strengths. When we know, because he told a fully rendered Michael Myers origin story, and then he's not scary anymore. Like he was always this nameless, faceless shape, and no one quite understood why or how he was doing the things he could do. And Loomis, who by the end of it is stark raving mad, has just these theories and wild sort of, voice montages of why Michael is so evil. When creators need to be strong enough to resist this, fans ask questions to which they don't really want the answers. We say we want to know why Michael was crazy, but deep down we don't really. And when you give it to us, we'll love it for a bit, but once the sugar hit wears off, we start actively hating it. And Child's Play's never really done that. It sort of leans into its strengths, and it embraces its absurdity. Like Chucky's got, like Tiffany comes in and Billy Boyd's character, the little Boyd doll, and well, like we mentioned, he's in the fucking White House allegedly, and yeah, he'll be on a space station. He'll be on Mars in the next 10 or 20 years.
Which is
it leans into its strengths. It plays to its strengths. And I think that's the key to Chucky's success. Which is
something I always found fascinating when the won't take up too much time. Which is something I always found fascinating about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reboot and all of that back in the day when Michael Bay wanted to make them aliens, and people were saying, "Oh yeah, no, that's bullshit. They shouldn't do that. I mean, nah, man, it's got to stay true to the fandom. Like they've got to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles." Let me get this straight. A random compound conducted by David Warner turning turtles into ninjutsu action figures gets off scot-free, but them being aliens is a bridge too far. It's just weird to me that they do that. Very interesting, but also very weird when they decided to draw the line. Sort of like where I was going with that was the Mark Hamill reboot. I think it was just called Chucky in like 2019 or whenever it was. I think
it was called Child's Play. Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's a killer robot and there's no voodoo. So it's a killer toy. That's the broad stroke. Who cares if it's malfunctioned or it's... Which, by the way, is funny because they hated it in Chucky, but they loved it in Megan. So that's opening up a whole new can of worms, that.
Yeah, yeah, I did watch that reboot, but I can't tell you anything about it. It was just, I found it real unmemorable. I remember watching it, but I literally cannot tell you anything about it. That's how unmemorable I found it.
All right, closing moments for number 2. What do you think about this one? How would you sum it up?
Oh, awesome.
Without leaning into 3 or 1, how do you judge this one? How do you go?
Oh, it's awesome. It really stands on its own. I've had a blast talking about it tonight, and I'll probably watch it again. Over the weekend. I've watched it a couple
I
of
might
times.
watch it when you fuck off.
Yeah, I've watched it a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, but I've seen it many times, since it first came out as I was a boy. So yeah, God willing, I'll continue to revisit it in the years to come.
Look, he continues to ages, and it's fine.
Yes.
in the years to come, I'll say that every single day on my brother's birthday, he ages, and it's fine.
Yes.
Well, I'm a big fan of number 2s of things. Like, I know it's become popular in recent memory to be a big fan of Psycho 2. My brother recommended it to me like half a decade ago, and I thought it was a good film. I've always been a sucker for Jaws 2. Like, there's a lot of 2s out there that I really like. There's certain ideas in Highlander 2 I even like, which, they're gonna nail me to a cross and burn me like Connor's mother at Endgame or whatever the third one was, for me saying that. But a lot of number 2s, there's always something interesting to it, because I remember Irvin Kershner said something about The Empire Strikes Back, and that was, well, the struggle with being the follow-up is that you're not the breakthrough. That's the real crux of the issue there, is that people are familiar. They're already familiar with what you're trying to sell them. So you have to bring something new to the table. And maybe George had a little bit to do with how they managed to make The Empire Strikes Back and all that kind of stuff. But a sequel trilogy, it takes very crafted people to really crack the code. Like, I'm a big fan of City of Angels. Like, I think that delivers very well on a part 2. Granted, Child's Play 2 is very different from that in the fact that it still has the same vein DNA with Andy and Chucky and stuff like that, but the broad strokes being there, like, it's almost the reverse of Jaws 2. Like, all the returning cast are there, with the exception of, Steven Spielberg. Same thing here in a way. And no, I really enjoyed it. Very interesting choice. You really caught me off guard with this one. I hadn't seen it in a while. Very familiar with 1 and 3. I was glad to go back to this one, and I had a very good time, definitely.